Well, guys, what you're looking at is what used to be a 4,000 square foot barn. About 3 weeks ago, this 70-foot tall red oak that's 60 feet wide came crashing down and absolutely obliterated the barn. I mean, it hit so hard that what I'm standing right here used to be the back end of my John Deere Gator. It hit so hard that it blew the bed off the Gator, blew it through the barn doors, and turned my Gator into something that was about 3 feet tall to something that's about a foot tall. Now, back behind here is a condemned building. I can't get into it. It is absolutely just getting ready to fall over. So I was just thinking, man, I just got to quit gardening. I mean, all my stuff was in there. All of my seed starting stuff, all of my trays, all of my fertilizers, all of my equipment, all of my hand tools, they're all gone. So I'm just not going to go ahead and garden this year. I'm just going to go ahead and rebuild and start all over again. As a matter of fact, 30 minutes before this thing fell, we had just put up a new corral and extension off of the barn. But as I was walking around the side of the barn, there was one section that I could safely get into. And in that one section, there was the 4 tools that I use all the time. So it's almost like God saying, hey, look, if I've given you the shovels, I'm just not going to let you lean against it and dig the hole myself. I gave you the tools that you need. And it was kind of hypocritical of me to say I'm going to stop gardening because it's just too hard, because I don't have all those little special gadgets and gizmos. But truthfully, you don't need all of that. And I've said that. So I'm going to continue to garden. I'm going to continue with setting my gardening up and tilling my soil. And with those 4 tools that I have, I'm getting ready to show you, I'll be able to have a successful garden. So let's go out to the garden now. I'll show you those tools. And at the same time, we're going to talk about maybe even some succession planning, crop rotation. We're going to talk about how I'm setting up the soil and some soil amendments that I'm using right now that I don't need all of the special gadgets and gizmos that are inside. So let's go out to the garden. I'm going to show you what I've got going on and then how we're going to do this. All right, so one of the first things that survived the crash in the barn was actually this guy right here. And this is a gorilla cart. It is one of the most used tools that I have in a garden, and this thing is about 5 years old. Now, normally you're going to see some type of a product review and they're going to pull it out of the box and it's going to be nice and shiny, but the tools that I'm going to show you have been absolutely just abused for the last several years. This guy right here was actually left out in the Florida sun when we were moving from zone 9B to zone 8B where we currently are. It was left out in the Florida sun for about 6 to 8 months, and that's Florida rains, Florida sun, just absolutely abused. And when we went to go get the rest of our stuff to bring it up, this guy was still in great shape. The only thing that I've had to fix on it has been the back tire ran flat. Now the new Gorilla carts come with a no flat tire, so you won't have to have that problem. A couple of the good things about this cart: 1, it does roll incredibly easy. 2, it has something on it in the handle that I love. Now you can see this handle, I did a little modification to it. It has a screw that goes right into the center that holds the handle to what you pull it with. But what I did is I just went to Tractor Supply and I got this little cotter pin. The reason why I did that is when I take the cotter pin out, I can just drop this handle and it just leaves this U exposed right here. Now, I have to take out to my garden here, I have to take it about 400 to 500 yards to get it out to where we are now. Now, what I did was I used to have it attached to the back of my Gator, but my Gator is now a foot tall. What I did do is I took my 0-turn mower that was actually up by the house and just attached an eye bolt to it. And then now I have this U shape where all I have to do is just take it, I can attach it right back to the back of the 0-turn and I can pull it out here to the garden. So that's one of the great benefits to this thing. The other thing is, let me get this back in. Just drop that cotter pin back in and we're good to go. The other thing that I like about this, it is a tilt bed. Now, the tilt bed has this handle on the very front. Let me see if I can show this to you. So this handle on the very front right here, all you have to do is pull it up and the bed tilts up. Now, one of the good things about the way this is designed is this back tire here, as you tilt the bed, it rotates underneath, kind of keeps the center of gravity towards the middle, and it allows it to dump really easy. So all I have to do is just take it, pull the handle, and I can lift this thing up, and it's going to dump everything that I have inside. All right, here's the other 4 tools that actually survived the crash. I think I might have said that I only had 4 total, but counting the gorilla cart, it actually makes 5. So as a beginner gardener, some of the things that you may want to add is going to be this. Now, we'll start with the simplest first, and then that is just, well, it's just my garden shovel. Now, this one, I can't even tell you who the manufacturer is, but this thing is probably 10 to 15 years old. It has been completely abused. Something that you have to have in your garden. All I did was make sure that I had one that had a composite fiberglass handle. So that one's just a quick one to get it out of the way. The other thing that survived was this right here, which is my garden rake. It's probably the number 2 thing you need to have in your garden. Now, if you're looking for a garden rake, the one that I picked, this one actually came from Husky. I think they carry this one at Home Depot. But the reason why I like this one, when you're looking for any garden rake, and I really don't care who you buy it from and where it comes from, but this one I like specifically, make sure that you have one that actually has 2 sides to it. Now, you have the tines down on this side right here, and then on the top side of it, it actually has another bar. This bar is pretty much serrated. And the reason why I like this, and you'll see it here in just a minute, is this grabs, and as it rakes, these rakes have a little bit of a bend to it, these tines right here, and it kind of helps dig into the soil. But the very top part of it with this serration, so as I rake it back, I can just spin it over and then use it to chop up any of the bigger clumps of dirt. And then also the handle, again, big fan of the composite handles. But there is one issue that I found on one of my other tools by having a solid composite that we'll talk about in a second. So the garden rake did survive. Now we are out here right now in this is a 20 by 30 garden that I'm going to be planting some fall crops in. We already have some of the squash going, but I'm going to have some of my root crops and some of my leaf crops that are going to be coming in. So I need to till that soil up, kind of reclaim it. We did have a time where I wasn't out here for about 6 weeks because of a family issue, and it became overgrown. These 2 tools that I have now that I'm going to show you are going to be very instrumental in prepping the garden. And then while I'm showing you how the tools work, we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between succession planting and also crop rotation. And crop rotation is critical inside of a garden. So the next thing that I did have that survived was this thing right here. This is my broad fork. Now this came from Bully. This is 20 inches wide. The tines are about 8, I think they're 12 inches deep. And what it does, it actually, the tines loosen up the soil, and I'll show you that in just a second. And you just push it in and then pull it back, and it loosens up the soil rather deeply. Now, one of the things that I did find with Bully, this is something that you probably wouldn't do normally, but when the barn did get crashed and the roof came down, it was exposed to the August sun, and it sat out for about 4 weeks. And what it did, used to be bright red, it faded out quickly, but right here, if you look, this composite handle did start to crack. Now, I don't see that as a normal wear and tear, because normally you're not going to leave this thing sitting out for about 4 or 5 weeks into the sun. But it has been a great tool for us to use to break up the soil, to loosen it up when we're getting ready to do the final tool turning of the soil. So it breaks it up really deeply. I love this thing. If you're going to get one, I'll leave the link below. It's about $140, $150 investment, I believe, but it really does help when we start tilling up the gardens out here. And the next one we got, this is it, and I'm going to show you why I love this thing. But this tool, well, it's not even designed for a garden. It is an absolute beast, and it's perfect for if anybody's older, if anybody's a little bit shorter. This thing is just phenomenal. Now, what this is a roofing fork, and it's designed to actually be used to scrape the top of a roof to pull the shingles off of it. But this is made by Anvil, and I did get this one at Home Depot. You can tell by the orange, but I think just about any one of your big box stores you can find these in. I've tried to find them on the internet, and quite frankly, I couldn't. So just go into your stores, it's not going to be in the garden section, it's going to be over in the roofing section, and it's about half the price of a regular garden fork. The reason why I like this thing, one, it's all metal construction, it has a T handle on the top, so it actually helps when you're using it in different modes. Now also, The bottom here, the tines are about 1 inch to 1.125 wide. I didn't really measure it, but it's about 1 inch to 1.125 wide. And it works for grabbing the soil. It also works for as a quick rake, which you're going to see here in just a minute. And it does work with the weeding process. So these are the 4 tools that I'm going to use. And then let's go in and I'm going to show you how I'm using each one of these 4 tools. And it's really all you need to get your garden started. All right, we're going to start off with this guy right here. This is my roofing fork. But what I want to do in this 15-foot section right here, it is completely overgrown. I have to reclaim it and get ready for some of my root crops to come in. So I've got it already marked out kind of where I need it to be, but I want to get all of these weeds out. Now they reclaim this garden quickly. Now, a lot of you may have seen what they call granddad's weeder. Well, this can work the same way, but this is how I use it. So the first thing I'm going to do is just these clumps of weeds right here. I can just go in this little edge, I'll step on it, and then I'm just going to go ahead and loosen it up just a bit. Then I'll take my garden fork, see how this T-handle works so well, and I'm just going to kind of loosen the soil up around it. I'm going to put in it, just like your granddad's weeder or whatever they call that thing, I can just twist it, and then out comes the weed. Now the forks are so wide that all I have to do is just pick up the weeds and shake the dirt off, and I can just put them back into a pile. Now I can do this the entire way of the garden. I'm just going to take it, chop it up a little bit, and I'm going to twist it, and the majority of those weeds are going to come right out. So we're going to go ahead and run through the whole garden this way, and then we're going to come back and we're going to start using our broad fork. All right, while I'm doing this, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about crop rotation. Now, this is fall for us, but most of us as beginner gardeners just consider our gardening time to be in the spring. And then that's when we have our superstars of the gardens, our tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers. But there's another side of our gardening season that is actually, sometimes I even consider it more rewarding and more fun, and that's the fall gardening. But that brings us into talking about crop rotation. Now, a lot of you have given me some great ideas on the way that you do your crop rotation. Like Ms. Harris, I think you're up in Athens, Georgia. She disagreed with me vehemently about my use or my belief in how effective cattle panel trellises work. But we came to a conclusion that we both had great ideas, and she started talking about how she does her crop rotation inside of her garden. Now, the secret behind a crop rotation, if you look at some of these charts, they're super confusing. They talk about which exact plant that you can plant right after another one, and we do a crop rotation so that we can continue to revitalize the soil, but also we can use the nutrients that are there, and it doesn't put a lot of pressure on our soil. Now, you can look at those very complicated charts and try to compare which ones you're going to do and do the exact same crop that they recommend. But I'm going to give you the really quick, easy, and simple solution for this. You may want to write this down or just kind of commit it to memory. With crop rotation, since we're going from spring to fall, just remember this. The way that you want to rotate a crop is going to be leaves, roots, and fruits. Then at the end, if you have time, you can throw in beans. So leaves, roots, and fruits are the way to do it. So that means a leaf is going to be something like your lettuces, your kales, your brassicas are considered the leaf side too, which is going to be your broccoli, your cauliflower, your kohlrabis. All right, so that's going to be kind of your leaves. And then right after that, you want to plant your roots. And the roots would be anything from your carrots, your radishes, your turnips, those kind of things will become your roots. And then your fruits, like we talked about, is usually your springtime crop. And then that's your tomatoes, your cucumbers, your peppers, anything that produces a fruit. And then the last one, like I said, is beans. Now, the reason why I like to throw beans in there is the fourth. The beans, or any type of legume, actually is what they consider a nitrogen fixer. Now, what it does, the roots of the beans themselves, they actually put nitrogen back into the soil. Now, don't be misled that if you throw some, let's say this used to be black-eyed peas right here. If you throw a crop of black-eyed peas and then you just cut it down afterwards and then you're going to have a bunch of nitrogen in the soil, it's not really true. It takes about a year for that nitrogen to become available for the crops again. So this is soil that had black-eyed peas in it. There is some nitrogen that's in here that they put in, but that nitrogen is not going to be readily available for our crops until this time next year. But it's a good idea, once again, is just to use your roots. Once again, just go ahead and remember, when it comes to crop rotation, leaves, roots, fruits, and beans. All right, here's another benefit to this thing. I mean, if you're an older gardener, or if you're somebody with back problems like me, I was in the military in a Ranger battalion for close to a decade, so my back is shot. As a matter of fact, I destroyed it, I broke it, and had to have it rebuilt. So I'm usually in a lot of pain when it comes to my back. But one of the things this guy provides for me right here is it does, because of the T-handle, it does allow me to kind of create some stability when my back's really hurting and I don't want to bend over, that I can lean against when I want to pick up the smaller weeds as I'm going through. Also, another benefit to this guy is that the size of it is just right here where I need it to. The weight where I need it to be. So the weight of it is enough where it'll just drive into the soil by itself. And then also with the width of these tines, let's say I have some small weeds that are here, all I have to do is just grab it, and with the width of these tines, it almost works as a rake, so I can just pull them right off the surface, and I don't have to even bend down if I don't need to, and just kind of put them back over into the pile. All right, we got just about the majority of this row done, and you can see how easy this fork picks everything up. I can just shake it and shake some dirt off, and then it leaves the weeds. Now what I'm going to do with these weeds, a lot of you would say that just go ahead and turn them into the soil and let them decay. Well, I'm not going to do that with this particular group, because we had some diseases that were in our black-eyed pea row, and what I don't want to do is to have those things overwinter and then reappear. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking these weeds that are here, and if you haven't heard of one before, we're building a lasagna garden for kind of a no-till project to see how easy that would be to build as just a beginner gardener, and truly how long it'll take with the materials that you have available. So we're going to go ahead and get this stuff picked up, and then we're going to step over to this next row, which I've already done, and I'll show you the next tool and how we're going to use it. All right, so here's the next tool that survived, and this is my broad fork that I've already shown you. Now, what this is designed to do is actually to till up the soil. Now, you can till the soil a couple ways. You can actually use a mechanical device like a tiller. You can go out and rent one, or if your barn didn't get destroyed, you can own one. But a tiller has a tendency to disturb the soil a little bit too much that I want to do in here. So what I'm going to do is use my broad fork. Now, broad forks come in different sizes. So this one is 20 inches. Now, they have a 36-inch one, which is great. They call it a market garden fork, so it is perfect for a 36-inch row. My rows are 24, and a 24-inch broad fork probably would have been better for me, but I ordered a 20 just because of the size of it, and I wanted my kids to be able to use it too. The wider the fork, obviously, the more difficult it's going to be to till it. Now, this soil, we started with this garden about, it was a year ago, and it was absolutely dead soil. We had about 40% clay, 50% silt, and it was just hard packed, some of the hardest soil that I've ever seen before. We did the same process, we added some amendments to it, and this is year number 2. So what we're going to do to till this up is we're just going to take our broad fork, and you see the tines, they're about 12, maybe they're 14 inches, I don't know, and we're just going to drive it into the soil. If it doesn't go all the way in, I'm just going to step on it and wiggle it, so I know my tines are down deep. Now, I don't want to pull the soil all the way up, because I want to leave the microbes kind of where they are, and the key to a really healthy soil is to have a very healthy microbial environment. So we don't want to just till it up and destroy all of that microbe base. So I'm just going to take my broad fork, and I'm just going to loosen it up just a little bit. I want to loosen it up so I can get some oxygen down there. It's going to allow the roots to penetrate just a little bit easier, give me a healthier plant. And I'm just going to pull the fork back about another 4 inches, and I'm just going to do that again. So I'm just going to go all the way down this row. Now, while I'm doing this, let's talk about something else. Let's talk about whether you should start with seeds or whether you should buy transplants. Now, behind the power curve when it comes to starting from seeds because of what happened. I'm about 3 weeks to a month behind, and I don't think I can get my seeds to grow. And the fact that I had this phenomenal grow table, it was automated with the lights, it was perfect, it would grow some really healthy seedlings, but it's now absolutely gone. I have to build another one, so if you want to see how I build my seed starting trays with grow lights, leave a comment in the section below. Just put grow light or starting tray, and then I'll do one of those videos if you're interested. So let's go back to getting transplants. As I made the decision that we were going to do our garden and we weren't going to stop, I did realize I was going to be behind that power curve. I got an email from a company called Haas Tools. Now, any of this stuff that I'm recommended or I'm talking about is stuff that I use. I mean, I got some hate stuff saying, oh, you're just doing it for the money. No, truly, it's stuff that I use and abuse in my garden. But I did get an email from Haas Tools. They're in southern Georgia, and he has what he called a brassica bundle. Now, the brassica bundle is going to have broccoli, cauliflower, kale, spinach, and what else was in that thing? I think that was it. It was those four. But it comes with the seeds. The seedlings are going to come in, and it's going to have 40 plants, which is going to be really, once you get it done, there's going to be plenty for this garden. And it's actually exactly what I was going to plant. So if you are a beginner gardener or you're behind the power curve, go ahead and look at them. I'll leave the link again in the description below. See if it makes sense to you. Now, it costs around $40, $45, but if you're going to buy it from a local garden center, each one of those plants that you're going to buy from is going to cost you about $5. So for $40, I can get enough to do the entire garden. I'm well ahead of the power curve. I'm not taking any of that risk. Another reason number two, that you may want to start with seedlings instead of starting with seeds. One, they're a little bit more difficult to grow, especially your brassicas. And then number two is the pest pressure. So as soon as your seedlings get into the ground, if they're very, very young and you put them in the ground, there's a lot of pests at the beginning of your fall growing season because the rest of the normal spring garden vegetables are gone. So they're going to start attacking your seedlings. If you get an older seedling, a lot of times you're going to be bypassing that one pressure of pest as they're trying to get their last feed in before they go dormant for the winter. So that's just what we're going to be doing. If you want to see, again, what we're getting and how we're planting those when they come in, just please leave a comment section below and I'll crack you out a video. If you bought any seedlings from somebody else, another recommendation, a good supplier, put that in the comment section. Go ahead and share it with everybody. Let's get this thing finished up. All right, we got just about the majority of this row done. And you can see how easy this fork picks everything up. I can just shake it and shake some dirt off, and then it leaves the weeds. Now, what I'm going to do with these weeds, a lot of you would say that just go ahead and turn them into the soil and let them decay. Well, I'm not going to do that with this particular group because we had some diseases that were in our black-eyed pea row, and what I don't want to do is to have those things overwinter and then reappear. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking these weeds that are here, and if you haven't heard of one before, we're building a lasagna garden for kind of a no-till project to see how easy that would be to build as just a beginner gardener and truly how long it'll take with the materials that you have available. So we're going to go ahead and get this stuff picked up. And then we're going to step over to this next row, which I've already done, and I'll show you the next tool and how we're going to use it. Since I've tilled the soil up with a broad fork, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take my rake and I'm just going to cover across the top. Now you see, as I'm going across the top, before I add my amendments, what I want to do is kind of break up any of those clumps. So I'm just going to kind of drag it across. And the reason why, like I said, I like that kind of knife edge with that serration on the top is if I pull it apart, this guy right here, I can just spin my rake over, kind of chop it up, and then get all the big pieces out. Now you can also just kind of use a chopping technique like that, but I found when you get the really heavy ones and the real thick ones, your clays, you can just bust those clay clods up. before we put any kind of amendments. And this also helps us get the soil even. So if there's any holes or you may have some ponding water, you can get those kind of filled in and kind of get you your base. It doesn't take long. All right, before we go into our final turn and how we're going to use our roofing fork, I wanted to introduce you to what I use as my soil amendment for this particular type of soil. Okay, this is the soil amendment that I'm going to be using. This is from Simple Garden Happy Life. Now, I don't have a link to it. I do know that I found this one about 60 miles away from me when I happened to be in the panhandle of Florida. They have it there, so I grabbed quite a few bags, threw it in my SUV, and drove home with it. This is 90% compost and 10% manure. So what this does, not only does it add microbial life to the soil, it helps with the drainage, but with the cow manure already being mixed in with that 10%, it's going to provide some nutrients for our plants that we're going to be putting in here. Now, if you want to do this, I would always recommend starting the turning and the prepping of your soil several weeks prior to you putting in your plants. And the reason why, if you're going to be using an organic fertilizer or if you're going to be putting in cow manure, those nutrients have to be broken down. They're not readily available. The microbes have to go to work on it. And it takes it sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes even a little bit longer. So before you plant your seedlings or before you put your seeds for your root crops directly into the ground, a couple weeks beforehand, come do what I'm doing right now. Get your soil ready, and it gives you a chance to get back out in the garden. So the way we're going to put this stuff in is it's 1 bag or 1 square foot for every 10 square feet. Now I have here, this is 2 feet by 20 feet, so that gives me 40 square feet. I'm going to be using 4 bags. So I'm going to spread these out, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fork, and I'll show you here in a second, and I'm just going to turn the soil over, and I'm going to get it worked in to about 5 to 6 inches deep. So that way I know that I've got my nutrients buried into the soil, so when the seedlings are in, it's going to be loose, the compost is going to be there, and then so are the nutrients. So let's go ahead and get this in. So while we're getting this in, that'll bring us up to another discussion when we start talking about nutrients. What do you guys use? Are you using organic? Are you using an inorganic? Are you using stuff that's off the shelf? Are you creating your own compost? Now, for me, I consider myself starved, not starved by food, but starved by time. So I consider myself kind of a time-starved gardener. So for me, and working compost, and this being a relatively new farm, starting our 2nd year out here, I haven't had time to really set my compost bin up or pay attention to it. So I do use organic fertilizers. And the way that I do it, and I'd like to hear how you do it, I will use manure that I'll mix in for my amendments now. And then right before I plant, I will take some dry organic fertilizer, and I use, again, my company that I like, I use Haas Tools. They have a complete organic fertilizer. It's kind of an all-around general fertilizer. It's made from chicken manure and some other stuff. Now, it's a dry fertilizer, so that means that it's going to take it 3 to 4 weeks also to start breaking down. So as the plants start to grow and they're picking up the nutrients initially from the cow manure, that Haas Tools dry organic fertilizer is going to be broken down in the next several weeks, and then it's going to be ready to go. So it's almost a series. And then the third thing I use, and one of the things that was saved from my barn, is a company that I absolutely adore. Oh, I should be using the Gorilla Cart for this. And that's called AgroThrive. Now, AgroThrive makes the only pre-digested liquid organic fertilizer that's on the market, which means that it doesn't have to go through the microbial process of breaking down to get it to the plants. So once the plants are in about a week or so, then I'll do a weekly dose of AgroThrive. So I have a very good, healthy environment for my plants to start with. Let's go ahead and get this stuff spread out, and then I'll show you how we turn it over. So with my rake, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure that it's evenly spread out along my garden row here. So what is it that you're going to use? What organic fertilizer? Are you using one off the shelf from a garden center? Are you special ordering it from another manufacturer that's out there. Which one do you use? I'm kind of curious. Like I said, we're always learning from each other. Speaking of the military, here comes a Black Hawk helicopter overhead, so it may drown out my voice. I love the sound of those things. All right, there we go. We've got it all spread out. Now let's grab our roofing fork one more time. Now what I'm going to do, since I've got it all spread out, let's go ahead and take this guy and let's just go ahead and turn the soil just a little bit. Again, I don't want to really disturb it very deep, so I'm just going to take my fork and I'm just going to kind of flip it over about 4 inches or so. I'm not going to go very deep. I'm just going to kind of pack it in there. See how that fork with those wide tines, it really helps pick up some of that soil. And I'm also kind of aerating and going down maybe a little bit further, down to 6 inches or so. I can get that all turned up, so then it gets that nice look to it. And then that's about it. That's all we got to do. I'll bust up some more clods with my rake. I'll go ahead and smooth it out a little bit, and then I'm just gonna wait for my seedlings to come in. Guys, I hope you got some benefit out of this video. All we do is just kind of show you what we do, provide simple solutions to your gardening problems and how we're doing things. We respond to your questions, and we also take your advice, because like I said again, I don't know how many times, this is a community. So while we're building our garden, and if there's anything that you want to see, let us know. If you want to see how we're tearing down the barn and what we're using to rebuild, what the destruction was, how I'm building another seeding tray, and how I'm putting in new grow lights, how I'm going to go ahead and order my seeds where I'm ordering from, and then how I'm going to plant those into the gardens, just give me a thumbs up saying, show me more. But I'm Greg from Bell's Backyard. I hope this video helps. I'll see you in the backyard soon.